Hey, welcome everyone. We are here gathered this evening for the beautiful beginning of our Community Compassion Project. And what is the Community Compassion Project? It is a very simple local action, a local project that we are introducing to you and to our communities this summer. And it is in coordination with a wonderful person, Dr. Mitch Abrams, and myself, Monica, the Healing Muse, and in connection to you and to our communities, hopefully lots of places. Well, we'll see this happen this summer. So what is it? That's why we are here to discuss, present, and then do a do's and don'ts and a Q&A at the end of our talk. So welcome, Dr. Mitch, and welcome to everyone that's joined us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Monica. Um, so I'm super excited to be here with Monica sharing this opportunity, this compassion project. It's so meaningful. And what we're going to share a little bit tonight is some of the science behind compassion. And what we're going to learn in a very brief time, that compassion has a really powerful effect on not just your own health, but the health of those around you, your communities. And as we'll learn, it's as much local as it is global in scope. So I'm very excited to be here and to begin this with all of you.
I'll talk a little bit about myself. I am the Healing Muse. That's my company name for the last 15, 20 years. Monika Meulman. And I've spent the last 25 years looking at plants and the earth and vibration and aromatherapy, essential oils, growing gardens, pretty much everything and anything to do with the earth and growing things and connections. And I think the most important thing to me is to add something that my dad has taught me, and I like to work on with my friends and my clients, is to always leave a place better than you found it. And I feel that's one of my life core pillars that I follow. And I've taken a lot of time studying the Tao, the I Ching, Feng Shui, a lot of the Eastern arts, and I put them together with my science background. I have an honors degree in zoology and psychology. And so I'm merging the East and the West together in a very hands-on way most of the time. And I would like to present Dr. Mitch. And can you please tell us a bit about who you are, where you came from, and what are you all about?
Excellent. So I'm originally from the East Coast and of Canada, and my background is in medicine. I am a specialist in diagnostic imaging, so radiology. And I'll share a little bit when I'm presenting some of the science, but a bit of my work is very much focused on the science of compassion. I did a program through Stanford University called the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education. And I'm on a mission to add more compassion in healthcare, in our communities, and to really understand the world through a new lens of human connection, because the implications in healthcare for self-care, for patient care, but as well for our communities are just profound, as we're about to discuss. So that's me in a nutshell.
And a great nutshell, I think. Okay, and then to continue gathering more fruits of our labor and summer harvest, let's go on to, we're going to talk about the program overview. Most simple basics. I had put together an experiment where I wanted to see what 6 flowers did with 6 different words and 6 different vases in my shop. I had an apothecary and I had a beautiful window space. So I put together vases and I put flowers in each one and I had them sitting in the window and I put a word in front of each flower and I allowed people passing by. I said, and the sign in the window, just look at the word, say it to yourself out loud or quietly, and then say each word and move on. That was it. And the results were very interesting, which we'll talk a little bit later about. But the whole premise of the experiment was very simple. easy. And I wanted people to engage with the window space. I wanted people to engage with my shop and the community. And I wanted to test to see if words do have power. Will words have any effect on the flowers? And so now what we've decided to do is to roll it out on a big community level locally and anywhere in the world that people join us and hear this, so that we can replicate it a few hundred times and see if there's any kind of semblance of certain words having one effect or another. So that is the summary of the project. Or can we go on to the science?
What I thought maybe we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the science, and everyone see my slides. Community Compassion Project. Okay, so we'll just start off by, I thought it was very interesting that Einstein said, don't let your brain interfere with your heart. And I think by the end of this brief conversation, we're going to have a little bit more context of what Einstein was meaning behind that. So again, very quickly, the reason why I got so deeply involved in compassion is when I was in my very first year of medical practice, I found out I required open heart surgery. So doctor became patient, and I experienced our medical model from a very different side, a very different perspective. And once I returned back from work, I was appointed the chief of our department. So very quickly in my career, I experienced our entire healthcare model from the bottom up and the top down. And I realized that there's something fundamentally missing in not only how we study and define health and well-being, but also how we deliver it. And this really catapulted me in a very different direction in life. And eventually on my journey, I stumbled upon this program at Stanford University, the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education. And it was all about how to apply the science of compassion. And what I learned was fascinating, because it turns out that when we are compassionate to ourselves, it affects every aspect of our being, our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health. And it's interesting to note that the founder of this program at Stanford, his name is Dr. James Doty, a very famous neurosurgeon. He's a brain surgeon. And when we practice compassion, our brains structurally change. And this is interesting because it's as if, we can actually conduct non-invasive neurosurgery on ourselves. And this is not, this is not metaphorical. This is actually a truth, that our brain structurally changes when we practice acts of self-compassion. And so what was very interesting to me is that, the heart plays a pivotal role in compassion. Now, the heart actually is well more than just a pump. The heart, again, it affects the way that we think, the way that we act to ourselves and to each other, how we feel about ourselves. But the heart also affects the entire body. And again, it's not just about pumping blood, but very much about how we feel about ourselves, our emotions. And when we feel compassion, when we truly, practice acts of self-compassion, the heart plays a very interesting role in that the rhythms become very, what we call orderly, very smooth. And this is called a state of heart coherence. Now, I'm not going to get too far down this scientific rabbit hole around the heart, but I certainly invite you to check out a TED Talk that I did a little over a year ago, talking about the science of the heart. So if you're watching the recording, I invite you to take a screenshot, and afterwards you can watch and learn a little bit more about the heart. But for today's purposes, I want you to truly appreciate that when we practice self-compassion, it builds what we call our psychological resilience. And this is very important. What I'm showing you now is a study that was recently published not so long ago. And it was a massive study. Over 10,000 people were studied and followed for over 12 years. And what they showed was that people who had a higher degree of psychological resilience had a 53% higher probability of surviving over that 12-year span. And this is compared to people who are, unable to self-regulate, who do not have that resilience, who are not self-compassionate. So compassion has huge implications in the way that we, heal, the way that we thrive. And just to give you another example of just how powerful this understanding of compassion and the state of heart coherence is to our health. This was done in 2023. A peer-reviewed journal published this article where they studied the effects of heart coherence on individual health. And they realized that the more that people practiced these acts of compassion and cultivated what we call that state of heart coherence, the more that people practiced, there was a greater immunity to the SARS-CoV virus. And what's unique about this paper was that it wasn't just a correlation. They actually identified the exact protein that was being produced in our cells as a result of this act of compassion. So again, I can't stress enough just how powerful compassion actually is to our health. Now, what's interesting about compassion is that they say that compassion is like a muscle. The more that we practice compassion, the easier it is and the more effective that result is in the body. And in fact, Dr. Sarah Lazar from Harvard showed that when you practice these acts of self-compassion and you cultivate, states of mindfulness, which is a form of compassion, it actually can restructure your brain. As I mentioned before, Dr. James Doty, a neurosurgeon, recognized just how powerful these simple acts of compassion were, but how profound, that the implications were to our health, and that in as little as 2 months time, if you were to practice compassion for 20 minutes a day, within 2 months, I could show how your brain with an MRI scan actually structurally changes, just like the muscles in your body change by going to visiting the gym for 2 months. So compassion is fascinating. It's like a muscle, but it's also contagious. We know that compassion is contagious. We know that when people actually see an act of compassion or they hear a story of compassion, they are more likely to act in a compassionate way. They are more likely to think more compassionately about themselves and each other. And it's even deeper than that. This is a graph of 2 individuals standing about 5 feet apart from each other, and they're both wearing heart monitors. And what you're actually looking at is a tracing of what we call the heart rate variability. Again, I'm not going to get into too much of the scientific details, but what's important here is to note that you can see that these 2 rhythms, they are synchronized with each other. You can see how the heart speeds up and then slows down at the exact same time as the other. And this happens when you cultivate a state of compassion for yourself, and then you project that intention of compassion to somebody else. You can synchronize your heart rhythms. And this is an actual reflection of synchronizing your autonomic nervous system, your sympathetic and parasympathetic arms of your autonomic nervous system. So if you imagine a symphony of musicians and you hear that beautiful symphonic music, it's because all the musicians are, synchronized with each other. And when you are in a state of compassion and you project that emotion to others, you essentially become like a musician in this symphony of your community, of those around you. This has, again, significant implication to health and well-being. And in fact, the Journal of American Medical Association, they published an article that described that one 30-minute meeting with a patient before surgery, when an anesthetist, in fact, met with a patient before surgery for 30 minutes, not necessarily to talk about the surgery, but just simply to cultivate compassion and connection, it was shown to reduce opioid pain medication post-op by up to 50%. And there is a statistically significant reduction in hospital stay following surgery compared to people that did not receive compassion. And in fact, in another study, they showed that when people are in that physiologic synchronization and they're co-regulated with compassion, their pain perception decreases up to 50%. So again, compassion is huge when it comes to, again, your self-care, but also how we can help support those around us. If you're wondering, how does this work? Well, again, your heart plays this amazing role. It's not just a pump. Your heart is actually radiating a field of energy, a magnetic field. When you look at an electrocardiogram, that's an electric current running through the heart, and anything with electricity running through it also creates a magnetic field. So your heart is literally radiating a field of energy, and your sense of compassion, that emotion, is a rhythm. It's a frequency of energy that's radiating out into the world, and other people's hearts are receiving that information. They can feel your compassion. It's not coming from the brain, it's coming from your heart. So when you think about compassion, I want you to now to think about your heart. And this now begins to really lead into what we're going to do together. This flower project is really a way to help us recognize this energy that we're radiating from our hearts. Now, Dr. Masaru Emoto from Japan, he studied the effects of intention on water. And what they did was they actually had, petri dishes of water. They had groups of people talking to the water, different words. And it could be a positive word, it may be a nice word, or it could be a negative word, an aggressive word. And what they did was, once people spoke to that petri dish, they then would put it into a freezer. And at a certain point, they would look at the water just as it began to freeze, and they would look at it under a microscope, and they would look at the crystallization of the water. And you can see here that when the water was being spoken to in a positive term, like thank you or love and appreciation, the water crystals were beautiful. They were hexagonal, they were symmetric, like miniature snowflakes. When they were spoken to in a negative way, then the water crystal was very dysmorphic. It was not symmetrical. And this really begins to help us understand that the energy radiating from the heart can be and does influence the world around us. And Dr. Emoto's work, which actually has been replicated and verified in many ways, has been shown that, in fact, your intentions and thoughts can be recorded and demonstrated in water. And as a result of this, there have been many studies where plants have been used to study the effects of intention. Here's one project that was done in a school. You can see the effects of a plant being bullied versus being praised. And time and time again, we see these results. And so when I watched Monica's experiment, I just thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if we could help spread this exercise in our communities, in our schools, and really use it to bring about a meaningful conversation around compassion, the science of human connection. Now, we're not so much focusing on what the results are going to be. Yes, it will be nice. It'll be curiosity, wonderful to see the results. But again, the big objective here is let's start talking about the power of compassion. Now, before I end, one last thing I do want to share, because this conversation around compassion is not just about your health. and about the people around you, but there's a global scope here, okay? I want to just briefly introduce you to a project called the Global Consciousness Project 2.0. This Global Consciousness Project was started in the late 80s by a Dr. Roger Nelson at Princeton University. And they wanted to see if people's thoughts could and intention could actually affect the physical world. And so they use these little devices called random event generators, which are essentially like little mini computers, and they spit out zeros and ones randomly, like 100 times a second. And whatever you're going to get, a zero or a one, it's just random. It's 50-50 chance. And in fact, they're actually, these little devices are measuring the energy field of the environment, the electrons in the quantum field. So what they found is that when people focused their awareness and made an intention, like let's create a run of ones, that it would actually affect the output and it would be statistically significant. So what Roger Nelson started to do is they said, let's put hundreds of these and eventually thousands of these all around the world. And every little random event generator was spitting out zeros and ones just randomly, every second. And they collected all that data into one single database. And they basically created a global network of data. And as you can imagine, if we were all flipping coins, my coin flip would have no result on yours, no result on Monica's coin result. And typically that's what would happen. I mean, all the data was completely random. It was like static noise when you looked at all of the data in the global network. However, when there were moments when large groups of people were together at the same time with the same thought, with an emotional charge behind it, all of the coins synchronized, like all the data became ones or zeros. It went from randomness to non-random. It created a signal. So a signal emerged. And what they realized that over the years, as they began to recognize the result of collective intention and collective emotion, they found that the highest degree of change in the global network occurred with the greater degree of compassion. So when events were occurring in the world, when there was more compassion involved, they would see a greater result. They would see more ones emerge, out of that randomness. So what we're essentially saying is that we now have a device where we are actually studying this global brainwave. When you and I are all kind of focused with thought and intention and emotion together, we can now measure this on a global scale. Now, you may be thinking, wow, this is really interesting, but what are the implications? I mean, does this actually affect our communities and our world? And in fact, it does. In the 1980s, there was a Dr. Charles Alexander, a Harvard psychologist, and him and his colleagues hypothesized that when you bring people together and you focus on, compassion and kindness for a community, they hypothesized that they could measurably, demonstrate a reduction in crime or a reduction in fatalities. And so this experiment, the International Peace Project, the Middle East Peace Project, as it was called, during the 1980s, it was during the Lebanese Civil War, and they ran these projects at different times. They repeated it 9 times over 2 years, bringing groups of people together to cultivate this coherence and this compassion. And they found, and the results were peer reviewed. They were published in a very reputable journal, the Yale's Journal of Conflict Resolution, and they found that war-related fatalities reduced by 71%. They found that war-related injuries, they reduced by 68%. Overall conflict level reduced by 48%, and pro-social engagement between antagonists increased by 66%. And it was found that the likelihood that these outcomes were due simply by chance was less than 1 in 10 to the 19. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt at this point that there's a collective intention and that we actually do impact each other. We do impact the world. So this is something I think that's very important to recognize. And I can tell you that, 5 years ago, not many people would really talk about this. It was considered too woo-woo, too far out there for people to really believe in. But at this point, it's different because the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to 3 gentlemen that experimentally proved that we are all part of a non-local entangled universe, which simply means that we are all interconnected. We're all connected by a quantum field. And so every atom in your body is connected to every other atom of the universe. The information in you is part of the information of the whole, and the whole is the part of you. So your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions, your compassion affects not only your health, affects not only your local community, your local field environment, but also has a non-local effect. And I think it's very important that we all recognize just how powerful each and every one of us happen to be. Our hearts are so powerful. So again, when you are in a state of compassion, you're creating a coherent field, this coherent energy, and you're feeding that energy into a field that we are all being influenced by. So this is my job. We look at the light of the atoms in your body. We're all beings of energy. So again, if this is something that sounds so out there and scientific, just keep in mind, imagine having to go back and explain an MRI to your grandparents. And so we're now at a time in our own evolution that we can begin to reframe our understanding of who we are and what we are, both individually and collectively. So through this project, we're going to explain and explore compassion in so many different ways. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for us to practice compassion. And just to say, every 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, there's free Zoom calls where people can now connect, and they are connecting, where we're practicing heart coherence, an act of self-compassion that will help self-regulate your mind, your body, regulate your nervous system. And at the same time, we're practicing it because we recognize our common humanity. And so this project is really the first step towards a more compassionate, more coherent world. And with that said, my friends, I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Dr. Mitch. And then write down any questions or put them into the chat if you think of things, because we have time to openly discuss any ideas that come to you. We'll have time for that after. I will talk a bit more about the experiment, and I would love to put together some of the concepts of what you presented, Dr. Mitch, and where we come from and where we're at. And I made a note how I think where we come from as scientists, where we come from as a peoples from all of the world, is we've come from a place where if we don't see it or we don't measure it, we do assume it doesn't exist. Until we go way, way back in time, a long, long time ago, when the ancient cultures did look to the stars and to the sun and to the earth and to the animals and to the plants for guidance, there's an in-between time where we thought if we can't measure it, it must not exist. And so this is where I'm going to bridge the gap between the science and the heartfelt connection to the earth and all that is. And the second concept I want to bring in is the whole global concept, so that a lot of times I hear people saying, oh, what can I do? I'm just one person. There's so many big things happening in this world. It's too much. It's overwhelming. So let's take 2 examples in nature. I love the Pando. The Pando is one of my favorite places in the world, and I'm going to go visit and document it. What is it? The Pando is approximately 80,000 aspen trees that have been found to be all connected. It's actually one tree. And the tree sent out shoots. It's about 84,000 years old down in the Midwest in the United States. And when you walk through there, you are walking in one living organism that has 80,000 shoots. So that is a very global connection of trees and plants, all doing its thing, the one organism doing its thing on a very large scale. Example of how something can be very global, but it could be one. And then another example of that is how we know that forests talk to each other underground, chemically, biochemically. Trees talk from one end of the forest to the other. If there's a fire detected or if there's a change in the environment detected, a few thousand acres along, that information travels almost instantly through the bacteria underneath the forest floor to the other side and to all the other neighboring trees. So it's another huge global network that, okay, a tree could say, what can I do? I'm just one tree, but you're part of a coherent network, right? And so why not take it to the smallest level we can, our version of the atomic level, and we work with a single plant, a single flower that has been cut, that has been put in water. We've created our own environment, our own vessel, and we can explore to see what happens when we're in harmony or disharmony. And what do we mean by that? What do we mean if something's positive or negative? Like there's no such thing really as positive or negative. We just give meaning or connotations to these things. We give words to experiences. So there is some meaning associated with love, war, anger, peace, joy, fear. As soon as we hear those words, we have a certain feeling. We have a certain experience inside. Now, I think what's happened over the years is that we've forgotten that we have that experience. We've forgotten with a lot of the distractions over the last 100 years, 150 years, there's more to do, there's more distractions about us. We've forgotten to see and look within that we have that experience. Every time I say the word, I love my flowers, I love your flowers, or I hate the weather, you responded to that. You might not have noticed it, but your body, your ears, the processing happened. It happened in your nervous system. It happened in every cell in your body. And so this experiment is a very tiny, very local, small version of this experience. And to tie in one more concept is something very familiar and easy for all of us is that if we have pets, you have pets like dogs and cats, you have your own cat or dog or your neighbors, your friends, you're like, oh, I love Charlie, he's so sweet, or I love Pebble, she's adorable. And we have this coherence, we have this connection with our dogs, our pets, or our friends' dogs. Because we are tuned in, right? We allow ourselves to connect. And the same tuning in is in us with each other that happens. But again, we've forgotten to pay attention to it. We've forgotten to see it, perceive it, and break it down, digest it, or absorb it and do something with it. Or we've been taught to ignore it. We've been taught to ignore the messaging. Just get the work done. Doesn't matter that you don't like Mary, or it doesn't matter that you're irritated with so and so. We've been taught to ignore it. So again, this experiment, this project is another lesson in, hey, let's pay attention. Let's pay attention to this word. How do I feel when I say this word? Does the flower feel anything? Do I care? Do I not care? Right? So this project is all about recreating, remembering these connections that are always there. They're always there. Like Dr. Mitch said, the heart coherence, all you have to do is tune in. All you have to do is center a bit and say, hey, okay, I'm in my heart. Things are happening. They're always happening, but they're happening more and they become more powerful. And you allow yourself to expand in a way, right? Of how big your reach, how far your reach goes. Let's invite everyone we can think of that would like to play around with what words mean. What do they mean to us? What do they mean to the flower? Do they mean anything at all? Who knows? But let's invite everyone we can think of to set up. Now we have a different kind of dialogue to break bread over compassion or to share compassion with people with a common language. Go over a little bit about
Shall we share the
whole
video
stuff.
before?
Yeah, let's go over the video, and then if there's any couple more things I wanted to add, and I think then we can go over to general ideas and questions. Sure, yeah, perfect. At our water experiment, and we're going to explore exactly if there's any kind of effect with these different words. I mean, who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea what's going to happen, but we're going to test it out and see. Stay tuned. We're doing a quick update for you guys about our water experiment so far. They're still in the water growing, but there's definitely differences going on now. So we have war here, love, fear, look at the colors, joy, slight color discoloration, anger, dropping petals, just giving up completely, and peace, vibrant. So I don't know if you guys can tell, but peace looks gorgeous. Love looks gorgeous. Fear's changed color. It's just gone into its own little zone. So out of all of these, they're similar, but peace over there and love over there are the least affected. Is that the environment? Is it the people? Is it by chance? Is it by random chance? Is it the frequency? What do you guys think? Send us your feedback. You can actually really see the differences. Peace is radiant. Love is radiant. Fear is in its own category altogether. War's completely fallen apart. It's time to wrap up our water experiment. Anger gave up completely. What do you guys think?
I think it was a successful experiment. Anger deservedly did poorly.
Anger did too poorly. But then what did you think of the flowers?
I think the flowers are beautiful. To me, it's different. I like it.
What message does it tell you?
It does me to be happy.
Be happy. Don't be angry. Love, fear, joy, anger, peace.
And that's how you do the water experiment. Right. Some things to note is that the experiment technically, if you were to test it, the preparation is neutral. There's 3 positive words, however you want to define them, 3 negative words, alternated. 1 flower that fell apart was in the middle, 1 flower that fell apart was at the end. Like there is no there's no clear environmental effects. And technically, the effect would have been all the same on all of the flowers if the words had no effect. So there's this assumption something was specific to each flower because they were close together, they were identical, they were purchased in 1 bunch. Chrysanthemums, I think they're like $10 for the bunch in the summertime. That's why we're doing it now, because it's very inexpensive. And they come all at once, bundled, easy to cut down. They're exactly the same. They're very hardy. They're forgiving, easy to work with, last a long time. But usually flowers last 2 to 3 weeks. So the fact that something like love and peace lasted 6 weeks is phenomenal. The experiment's very small and simple. You need about 6 feet of space. Any counter, any shelf will do, ideally away from the sun because the sun will heat up the flowers, break them down, and require a lot more maintenance. So it might be a shorter experiment. There might still be differences, but who knows? Um, think about, okay, one thing that we wanted to point out and put it on our Q&A is at the beginning, you take one picture. I don't know, you can see the flower. Okay, here. So you take one picture of the flower as it is, and then take a photo of all of the flowers together, and then take maybe one or two extra pictures of 2 or 3 flowers grouped together so that we can see the word and the flower itself. So ideally, you do a nice 10, 15 photos at the beginning, the first week of the experiment, and then take 2 or 3 photos of the setup and each flower every week, once a week. And that's the end. We would love for you to participate and for anybody participating to share as you're going on, because then we can repost things. We can share them with other people. We can invite you to do a live on Instagram or even on YouTube and go through some of the results or developments as they're happening. I'm going to share my screen and with us, send us links to everything. And then there's hashtags we would like you to use. So all of that's posted here. So the main one is Compassion Project 2025 or CCP 2025. I really like that one, the short one. And we have our Instagram. So you can tag us on your Instagram or social places, Community Compassion Project 2025. Mineral water, you can use tap water. The main important thing is that you're using the same water every time. Whatever you do on day one, do for each flower every week. Top it up as you need to, and about 3 inches to max 6 inches. What we want to do is have just enough water so the plants have enough food, they're drinking enough, but that there isn't any water touching the leaves. All the flowers are cut exactly the same height. Yeah, keep an eye on where the flowers are if they're near any pets. We do have a summary or a do's and don'ts list online. And we also have it if you're participating in the project, in our project summary. Some plants don't do well with cats and dogs. Look at where your project is, where your vases are. Are they near a lot of electronics? Are they near a server? Are they near a modem? Are they near a lot of different type of wavelength instruments in your home or in your office? It doesn't necessarily matter, but we want to know are they near something? Because if they are in a neutral space with no electronics, there might be a different effect than if there's a lot of wavelengths from electronics moving through the area. We want to know if your flowers are going to be in an area with a lot of activity, a lot of hub, a lot of noise, a lot of talking, a lot of music, or is it quiet? Is there just one pet roaming around throughout the day, all day? Do you actively talk to the flowers? All of those things are anecdotal and fun, but can be points of interest and add to the conversation of saying, hey, I really like the way this person's flowers turned out, what they did. What did you do? So it's good to keep an eye and monitor. What else do we need to talk about?
Just add, so everything that Monika is sharing is found in the landing page. And once you register, you'll receive an email with this information. So everything will be laid out. You'll have it on your screen. It's very simple for the setup. And also, when you register, you'll also receive a very brief questionnaire. It'll take you like 2 minutes, and it will ask you these pertinent questions about electronic devices, things to keep in mind that will also help us, understand the environment of your setup. So that's just, something that you'll have access to. The information, the questionnaires will be there for you. And also, it's very easy to make the signs, the words for each plant, but we also have provided a Google Doc that you can access, you can print. So it's very simple. We have everything laid out. And if you are a business owner, then we also have provided a little sign that you can add to your window so that your customers walking by will have a QR code that they could use that will bring them back to the landing page. So it explains everything. Very simple. We really made it in a way that it's such low maintenance and very easy to set up. I think what's really important for us is we want you just to share your photos, share your videos, share conversations, either what you're having at home, what you may be having with your customers, what it's doing to your environment. And we'll also have opportunities to connect with many of you to talk about your experiences and your why. Why did you want to participate? What did you find happen in your family, in your environment, in your business? And I think what's really exciting is that we can begin to share each other's stories, share each other's whys, and to also share what compassion is doing in each other's lives and in our communities. I think, Monica, what do you think? I think we've
got everything. There was a couple of questions. Yes, I recommend chrysanthemums because they are very hardy, long-lasting, and easy. They can be manhandled a little bit, and they'll probably last the longest. So you have the longest running time for your experiment. That would be the best recommendation. And I filled up the vases as needed every 3 or 4 days, depending on how warm it was in the shop. The cooler it is, the longer flowers will last. The hotter it is, the faster they'll break down. Doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, we have a question too. Wonder if the flowers themselves react to the words or the water responds and is accordingly influenced by the flowers. Exactly. There's so many different versions to do this experiment. So after we run this a few times with different places, there's a lot of offshoots to test, to actually start testing different effects. Is it the water? Is it the flowers? Right? Is it the position? So yeah, good question. So few people.
You bring up a really important point, Monica, is that for anyone who's watching this, the recording, even months from now, just so you know that there is no end date. This is really something we want it just to begin a culture of compassion. And once we begin this experiment, this variation, is something that we can continue to repeat and ultimately start changing and looking at different aspects of compassion. And once we have a community, that's engaged, we really have an opportunity to study and to explore it together. And most importantly, we're creating more compassion, which is contagious. So this is, not about just, this summer. This is about ongoing conversations.
Yes, exactly. So I have questions coming into the chat. Maybe
I'm curious, after we do this experiment, what would be the next suggested step to keep this conversation going? Because I know people that have done these sort of little experiments with their kids in their home to help them to understand, let's say, love and hate and the effect when they're trying to deal with bullying and things like that at school. But it's kind of like, okay, well, that's nice. Now what? So
Sure.
We do this in our businesses. So I have a Pilates studio and then my healing studio that's doing it. And I have a couple of other businesses that might be interested as well. And then it would be like, okay, what would be our next step with people? Is people do this for 6 weeks, to repeat it. With some people, it just might, yeah, well, we already did that already, what would be the next step?
Sure. So I'll just share, Monica and I have discussed about the opportunities where if this were to grow to a certain point, then we'll be able to look to see different trends within our communities, perhaps looking at different metrics, looking at crime rates, looking at social well-being. There's many things that we can actually begin to examine, looking for associations in our communities. However, where I also am very excited to kind of share is that right now we have created a not-for-profit web app called the Global Heart Sync. And what this is, it's a platform that actually gamifies the science of heart coherence. And the way that it works is that when people, once they get tuned into this conversation and they'll begin to learn about this, the science of human connection, they'll learn that there is this website where people can sign up. They'll receive free tools like a heart rate variability biofeedback app that will actually measure your coherent level. So how much compassion are you cultivating internally? And we can now measure that in real time. And so now when you practice these techniques, not only are you cultivating well-being, you can now measure and track your progress, but we can also do it as a team, as a community. And so we can now use this app to, and you will earn points as you practice, as you use this app. And the more time that you use the app and the more coherent you become, the more points that you earn. Your points are being collected into a global pool. And when we meet and collective milestones, we actually are unlocking corporate sponsorships so that we can provide more mental health and resilience programs in communities in need and in schools. So
How is it different than the Global Coherence app?
So we're actually leveraging that technology, the Global Coherence app, to measure heart rate variability. And we created a global heart sync website that now allows us to gamify that and turn it into real world impact. So now people can begin to witness this emergence of a global heartbeat. So this is what we're doing today with the Compassion Project, is really a baby step to get people tuned into this conversation, tuned into the science of heart coherence through compassion, and eventually lead us down this road where we can begin to witness a global heartbeat, and perhaps we can spark the heart of
local
humanity.
level to continue the conversation. The offshoot is the 3-year-old or the 5-year-old or the 10-year-old. If they had walked by this window or participated this in a community center or a yoga space, then it's easier for a parent or an aunt or a friend to say, hey, so let's say a loving words for your shoes when you put them on, because I know you struggle with your shoelaces. Or let's say a loving, send a word of love and comfort to your pillow as you're falling asleep. So we're continuing the conversation on a much more visual way because the child or the people have seen what might be happening to the flowers in the window, and it's easier. It's easier for us to say, hey, let's go grocery shopping. But before we touch any of the apples, we're going to say, we're going to pick the ones that feel like love to me. And we take the apples and put them in our bag. And we say, may these apples have love and peace. And so the conversation just becomes, I feel, easier to incorporate into using the power of words and the synchronicity and the harmony of it all into everything that's done. And so then I see the 7-year-old, the 10-year-old then becomes a 15-year-old who already embodies this, is changing their DNA, is growing into this. And it's a natural understanding in the person. So there's less resistance to saying, hey, I do want to help society. I want to think, I'm already thinking and feeling outside of myself. And I think then it brings us back full circle to nature and to being connected rather than getting disconnected and then finding ourselves again. Right? So,
and like you were saying, Monica, like it changes the frequency. And if you change your own frequency and we are all connected, then it's a global impact.
yeah, yes. We can go after the big picture and present it to society as society understands it. But then on the local level, we've created this tablecloth. We set the table. We've recreated this meal that's continually feeding people in the community in a totally different way. So anyway, thank you for that question, Pamela. We've got another question on the table. I'm going to keep with the food references if you guys don't mind. And we've got Marina. Here, you can, Marina, share your experience or your comment or question.
Thank you. Thank you. It was very funny. It's just on the subject. This is why I mentioned that. Yesterday, I went to the forest with my friend, and our task was to find a couple of aspen mushroom. I don't remember exactly the name, but it's eatable mushrooms, right? And we have a lot of aspens around Calgary, and so we like my task was program minimum was just a couple of them, just to make a very tasty soup. It's much better than what we buy in the superstore. And it was just wonderful experiment. I was in a very good mood, and we were going different ways. And I was actually, nobody was around, so I was talking like in full voice just with these mushrooms. I don't know why. I was just in such mood. Usually I don't do it. And so I was asking them, no, please, just one or two, just for my soup, just for interest of this, not just for fun mainly. And they started appearing. I started picking them, and I had around 30 of them, wonderful, all completely clean, without any worms or whatever, just wonderful, perfect. And I was talking to them like with more details. For example, I was picking one and was talking to him and to the other ones like, could you please, it's so difficult for me. I already removed my rucksack to put it inside. Maybe I will see another couple of them just around here, not get into the other place. And they immediately were appearing after I was asking them, and told that I am thankful for that. And they were just coming and coming and coming. And the funny thing that my friend who was going in the same forest, maybe like 200 meters from me, we just were communicating through phone. We didn't see and hear each other. She didn't find a single one. And by the way, when we entered the forest, she told in 5 minutes, when we were still going close to each other and still didn't see the single one, she told, oh, it's clear, like we are not going to have anything today. And I told her, no, don't tell this. And I had plenty of them, wonderful. And like practically every time when I asked them, I saw the new one. And she didn't pick any. So I just shared mine with her. So it's funny, but it's still like, and I do believe that it influenced my attitude and my talking to them. So I do trust you that your experiment was like that. So I for myself, I don't need to recreate this experiment, because I do believe in plants and things that they understand us and respond to our vibrations. I only don't know how to do this experiment for people, because I don't have any business, any like whatever. I just live in my house, so I don't know how to demonstrate it to people.
Just share it.
Marina,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say that, but that's the idea, that if the more of us do it and the more of us can share it online, then the more people is gonna become aware that it does have an impact in our surroundings and how everything works around.
You know, Lily, you have a great point. There was a few years back, the water bucket, was it the ice bucket challenge or the water bucket challenge? And you know, it was really just an opportunity to spread the word, just to do something together as a local and a global community that helps spread awareness. So, you know, these are simple acts that we can do together. We share our experiences, share our photos, and we'll get people interested, and we'll start to see it spread in schools, spread in homes, spread in businesses, community centers, and that's really, you know, what we're hoping for.
It's through these kind of projects and networks that we are connected. And to honor the earth and to honor all the resources by talking to them, by playing around with them. I mean, I call this play. This is a fun thing to do, so that there's no pressure. And it does invite more conversation and questions. Liliana said, when do we start? You can start tomorrow if you'd like. Just let us know. You're welcome to start tomorrow, this week, next week. We're doing an official start on July 22nd because we're looking at 5 businesses to herald, to have as hallmark, to celebrate, and to do like a grand opening with, because then it gets a lot more traction. But you're welcome to start tomorrow, and we'll start sharing all of your progress, your photos, questions, whatever your experiences are on our Instagram. And we'll add it to the website as well. So anytime you wish, just try and do your best to run it for 6 weeks.
Well, and I would just say for everybody who's listening today and whenever you are tuning in, our Instagram at Community Compassion Project 2025. Check it out on Instagram, follow and like, and we're going to begin the conversation of compassion.
Thing to everyone.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Dr. Mitch.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining, taking your time. Thank you for tuning in.